everyone. Welcome to the RevOps Co-op. We're having a video interview today with Brianna Yarborough. She is an advisor and executive leader for several high-growth startups, and she's also a Revenue.io top 25 leader in the space. So we're really excited to speak with her. Today's topic will be why finance and business intelligence are often missed opportunities in the RevOps space. So I'll let you go, Brianna. Please give us a little background on yourself, why you're an expert on this topic and why it's important to you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Seth, for just kind of kicking it off and introducing me. I, love everything that there is to just share about the entire philosophy that I have around this BI and financial operations sort of thing being highly connected to RevOps framework. So I'll start from the top. My early career, which I won't spend too much time on, was actually in oil and gas. I live in Houston, Texas. It's easily associated, it makes sense. All right, we get it. Left that, came to tech. And, coming into tech, it was more of a strategy and operations side of the business, doing, work where I'm starting to step into financial planning and analysis and thinking about business health and how are we growing, what is our bottom line, our gross margin, our cost of sales. And so with that strategy and operations experience, I started to really truly understand what it took to run a business and the underlying factors and levers that were associated with positive results. And in addition to that, I had a love for data in general. And so I began to educate myself. I didn't take any courses. I didn't go out and do a boot camp or anything like that for business intelligence. I learned it. I was at Mergen, which is a VR organization that I previously worked for, establish a business intelligence framework that integrated systems, everything from the ETL process, the data warehouse, the BI tool that we nested on top of it, and all of the integrated systems throughout our entire ecosystem I built. And then I also built the RevOps framework for which we did business and developed a strategy that, unfortunately, we hear this so often, one-person teams, and you've got maybe a contractor here or a peer here that is supporting the initiative, but huge advocate for work streams and peer, utilizing peers in other areas of other departments within the organization. And so I had to lean heavily on that in order to be able to sustain, but also, that gave me the understanding and the foundational, thought process that required, and that's sort of how I came up with RevOps in general. I started to see more and more of this revenue operations, and I was thinking to myself, this is what I'm doing. I am working heavily with our sales department, working heavily with our customer success department, working heavily with our marketing department to understand how much are we spending on these endeavors? What endeavors are we doing? Are we seeing more progress here or there? Same thing with sales. Where are we seeing the most success? Asking the right questions, customer success, all of the technologies behind it, enabling our teams. I was doing it anyway and had to put the name behind it to say, you guys gave me the title of Director of Financial Planning and Analysis and Business Intelligence, but guess what? It also includes revenue operations. And so that's how it all came about. That's the background story. And now that, I have left and, I was reporting to the CFO at the time. And so that's why it kind of made sense that I was over, financial planning and analysis to begin with, because that's not typical, but they are your best friend. At the end of the day, we often have these visualizations that are put together that say, this is what RevOps is, and RevOps equals marketing ops, sales ops, and CS ops, and that's it. And I don't understand why it doesn't also include some of the other bits and pieces that are highly important. There is a whole new sort of finance ops that is just as important as the other three that we just named, and we don't apply as much pressure or attention to any of that. And so, and that's, I think, one of the undertones of why I'm so successful. I come into the organization, understand, where's our ERP system? Is it connected to our CRM? Are they like, is there some, single source of truth that exists? And in most cases, at the level of organization that I tend to join or tend to advise for, there's not. And you have to start to build those things from the ground up. And so I just really wanted to highlight in this conversation that the sales forecasting that you're doing, oftentimes sales would have one number and say, hey, we did a bottoms up report and a forecast for you. Let's deliver this to the board and tell them that we're going to meet this target. Yay. But then you go to finance and finance says, there's no way in hell that this is going to happen. So we're not going to deliver this to the board, and we're going to deliver what this says to the board, because based on, our previous historical data and the way that we've performed in the past and all of the other things that you're not taking into consideration, these are what our true numbers are. And so you've got to work hand in hand on these things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you have a really interesting perspective. And I've seen so much friction between revenue and finance, which, it confuses me because, someone I was speaking to recently said, at the end of the day, we all work for finance, right? These are the people that are paying the bills, they're paying the employees, they're paying out the commissions. The targets are set by them most of the time. They are the ones that controlling the financial future of the business, which revenue is feeding into. So kind of from your perspective, because I don't think we meet enough people that come into RevOps through finance. So why do you think finance is a good entry point into RevOps, and kind of, how has that informed your perspective as a, RevOps leader in this space?
Absolutely. I think that digging into the numbers, really understanding the calculations and all of the inputs and the determinations and the movements of where money is spent, where it goes, kind of gives you the strategy, or I wouldn't even call it the strategy. It would be literally a line chart of like, these are the things that need to happen in order for the business to succeed. And so coming from a financial background and sort of like a strategy and operational background, because that also existed prior to the FP&A did, that finance piece really supported me taking the monetary values and applying it to what success looks like. The sales department doesn't care what amount of time an engineer allocates to a pre-sale engagement that we don't land. And guess what? That takes away from our dollars. It takes away from our money. And so if we're thinking holistically about the performance of an organization, we should really, truly think about it in that sense. And so I think that financial undertone from my background helps me set up an organization successfully to think about the things that typically will hemorrhage funds and leave your investors and your board members questioning you, putting you in a corner, and it makes you show up like you just don't know what you're doing. And so it, unfortunately, it has to happen. And you don't have to be led by finance. You don't have to feel like they're policing you. They are truly a partner if you allow it to be a partnership. If you bring them to the table the same way that you bring together the marketing, sales, and customer success or customer experience leaders, and you all have equality in partnership, then it works out just fine.
Yeah, that's another great point is, why not work together? We're all on the same team, we're pulling together. Finance isn't there to slap your hand away from the new shiny tool or the new hires that you think you need. You're all trying to work towards the same purpose, and finance is a big part of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I want to hit on something that you mentioned earlier, how you were a RevOps team of one. And this is a topic that we brought up recently in a hangout in the co-op. So kind of how would you advise a RevOps team of one if you were talking to one now? And would you recommend it as like a starting RevOps position for somebody who's trying to get into the function?
So I have a couple of, so I'm all about, tribe building, community building. I am a mentor in a few different capacities to, people that are trying to climb the career ladder that are sort of underneath me. And I have, mentorship relationships with people that are in higher places than me. Then we are having conversations at different levels throughout. And so with that, the RevOps person of one is definitely one of the hardest experiences that I had been against, but it challenged me, it made me who I am today, and it equipped me with the tools and the toolkit that I needed to be successful as I move forward in my career. And so I would say, if you're in an organization, the size of the organization definitely needs to be around, 100 employees or less. That matters. You can't come in and be a person of one at an organization that has 1,000 employees. It won't work out. And so there are different dynamics and variables that definitely apply in these sort of situations, but it's possible. It is 100% possible. And the more buy-in and support that you receive from your CRO or your COO, whoever you're reporting into, and whoever is advocating for a RevOps organization to begin with, the more that you'll see the fruits of the labor that comes out of the work that you're doing. And the other thing that I would say for person of one is, it is highly important to evaluate the entire sales cycle and even go beyond that and start to think about the entire company. What happens, with loyalty, past loyalty. If we lose this customer, at what point do we re-engage them? From awareness being the beginning, how do we even get in front of their faces? How do we position our product so that it is something that people are interested in, or curious about enough to reach out or want to have a conversation with us? How do we, enable our teams to be able to land those deals? All of that stuff being handled by one person, you've got to figure out how to prioritize. And so one of the things that I did is I just took a simple, at this time, we're not thinking about systems that help you with OKRs and help you with designing things that, not even project management tools. Like at the very, very early stage startups, you often don't have that available to you. But I will mention that there are a couple that do offer it for free if you fit certain standards. So if you guys are in an early stage startup and you have, less than a certain amount of revenue, whatever the requirements are, go out and seek those resources. They are available. But at the same time, I simply used a Google Sheet. And, I'm this like BI person. So I like to see my charts and my pivot tables. So I had in one tab, everything that needed to happen. And I prioritized it. I said, okay, within the next 6 months, these are my objectives. These are my priorities. This is how much time it's going to take to deliver on these things. This is the return on investment that we can anticipate seeing. And just kind of prioritized it 1 through like 6. And then those were the months that were associated with it, and looked at all of that in a visual manner that said, okay, I'm going to be spending, 30% of my time on strategy efforts, 20% of my time on tooling and technology, 45% of my time on stakeholder engagement. I mean, it was to that effect. And that is what helped me be successful. I shared that with my leadership. I shared that with my peer stakeholders. I made alignment and said, are these the right priorities for you and your organization? And we all moved in one accord. And on those initiatives, it wasn't just me doing the work. It was us driving the initiatives, because it was larger and bigger than just an individual person going out there there and, setting up a system, integrating it, putting some fields in there. No, we have to define what those fields are, and we have to do it as a team, and we have to understand the foundational aspect of what goes into it and do this in partnership. And so for a one-person team, that's my highest recommendation. Build out your process. Build out your entire sort of priority list. Prioritize it with some sort of, indication of, the most important to the least important thing that you would do. Put it on a time frame if it differs from the prioritization. Talk about what it actually is and what it'll take. Does it require money to be spent? And what sort of return will you see from that? What are we anticipating seeing? Pipeline generation growth? Are we anticipating seeing higher CSAT rates? Like what is the value that we anticipate to see from that? And that helped me be successful in that one person role. And I still do it. It's something that I just continue to do, and I do it with a team now. Now we have owners over pieces of, hey, you own enablement. This is your job. You've got that chunk of the pie. We'll, sync up at whatever cadence operationally to talk about how we've progressed. And it feels better that way. But it's no different from the pure stakeholder engagement thing, to be honest.
Yeah. I can imagine. And that's a great answer. I think, so much of what a RevOps professional does is take a huge cloud of work that many people should be doing and then decide, with the executive team, how should that work be done? What is the most valuable work within that cloud of work? What outcomes are we trying to drive, through that work? And you also touched on kind of what my next question was going to be, because, in teams of one, oftentimes, people are hired to be a RevOps leader when really the need is a RevOps tactician. So, how do you avoid becoming a system admin, a data cleanup person, and help keep the focus on the strategic? Because as we know, this should be an executive function and not just an order taker for those three teams. So, how do you elevate yourself as a RevOps leader from, taking over those tactical tasks to getting into the strategic conversations?
Yeah, I would say there unfortunately is a portion of that you just can't get around. There is some sense of urgency where there are matters where you've just got to knock it out right then and there. In other situations, I was able to vie for, getting a consultant on the side to help support the initiatives that we needed that, hey, we've got a couple of projects that would help, progress us forward, and it would allow me to focus on the more strategic and operational things, these conversations we need to have, the reporting, the forecasting, the enablement, the things that need to happen on this one person team, and make the case, especially with that prioritization list, showing how much time that it took to be able to do data maintenance or updates, et cetera, really supported the ability to get a contractor in that situation. I don't think that all people have the ability to, get that sort of support from their organizations. And that's when you have the conversation of, well, I'll have to do this tactical work, or I'll have to do this, but guess what? It means that I won't be able to get to this other stuff that is more important and more valuable to the organization at this time. And over time, we will begin to lose even more revenue. We will begin to leak revenue because we have not done the strategic work that needs to happen to get us to the next phase as we were scaling.
Yeah, absolutely. Setting expectations with the rest of the team is a huge part of it. Especially again, when you're dealing with so many disparate teams, so many people asking for so many different things. And if you're in charge of, gathering and presenting the data, you also have to explain, what relevance this data has and how we can act on it, and what we lose if we focus on one part of the data versus the other. Yeah,
Absolutely.
there's another great answer. So then kind of going forward with that thought, as you grow your RevOps team, how do you think about what a RevOps team should look like? How do you know what roles in a RevOps team you should hire for? How do you build those roles out? And then how do you justify that with the executive team and the finance team?
Oh yeah. I think about the building of a team in a sense of, breaking it out in the way we were just talking about. There is a strategic amount of work that has to take place, and there's a tactical amount of work that needs to take place. And so one of my first key hires would be a Salesforce admin or someone who could support those tactical activities. And we would, divide and conquer in that sense. And I would hope to, have them be a little bit more elevated than just a Salesforce admin, someone that could be a partner in obviously enabling and working on integrations with other systems and doing things that would help support the business move in the right direction from a tooling standpoint. So tooling and enablement would knock that out with that, Salesforce admin or whatever title we would want to give to that particular role. And then from that point, I think my approach to, and it depends, I would say if in a perfect world, I could have what I wanted, I would have an ops person for each of our categories that we're supporting so that they are taking the initiative of one, doing the stakeholder engagement, doing the forecasting, doing all of the things that need to happen with the team being embedded. Because as a single person, you can't sit in every single meeting that these folks are having to know how they're pivoting their strategy, to know how they are rebranding themselves, or to keep up with what's going on. And so to have those legs on the ground would be integral to just being successful. So I would say, perfect world, I would have myself, someone with a Salesforce, admin capacity that could, be a little bit more advanced, maybe interested in BI and kind of closer to that tooling and technology enablement sort of role. And then marketing, sales, customer experience, ops people that are our go-to sort of embedded in the function. You are digging in, you are crafting strategy, you're coming back together with the RevOps team, and we are in alignment. We know we're in alignment. And you have me to escalate situations to. I am up with the C-suite leaders, navigating and reporting up how we are making progress and the things that we are seeing, building out these dashboards so that it informs us of our particular business health and in any given time, and really utilizing my time to not be so in the the day-to-day work, but more about strategizing and delivering on a subset of things that we will focus on doing more as a roadmap, not necessarily like the bits and pieces that we are currently focused on, but what's next. And how are we, measuring the work that we just completed? How are we delivering on, the things that we said that we would deliver on? And how do we move to the next part of, whatever is important to the organization and follow along with new product, evolutions or developments, incorporating that, product analytics. Let's start to focus on areas that we haven't been able to focus on because we didn't have enough resources. And so that's how I would see my team evolving. And at some point, we would start to talk about, the larger the company, the more that you grow. I see a person that owns enablement. I see a person that owns insights. I see a variety of different roles that would expand from there. But my dream team was what I stated in the first half of that conversation.
Yeah, and I think there are a lot of RevOps leaders out there looking for that dream team and kind of needing those resources. So thanks for sharing that practical advice and the kind of the way to think about growing that team, because I know there's so many teams out there that are hitting that point where It can't just be one person, or it can't be just a strategist and an admin anymore. It's time to expand.
Yeah, yeah. And one more thing that I did not mention, another sense, and it depends on the product. And so I'll say that B2B enterprise might differ from an organization that has like monthly recurring revenue, and you require different systems and different setups and different things of that nature. And so B2B enterprise, I might even need a deal desk, or some sort of management of quote to cash, CBQ, CLM management, things like that, that we wouldn't have to think about quite as much on the other end of the spectrum for the type of SaaS organizations that we're talking about. And so I think that's a key thing to insert as we kind of close out that question.
Yeah, absolutely. Last question on that topic before we move on, and we're getting towards the end of our time here. But how do you think about either adding an internal or an external resource to the team? How do you know when it should be a consultant handling these things, someone on Upwork, or if you need to make a full-time hire and justify a W-2 plus benefits for this specific role?
Yeah, I think with that question, it depends on the type of role. For example, I prefer not to use Upwork for anything. The stake in the game is not there. It is harder to have someone commit to an SLA that is up to par with the standards that I typically have for my team. And so I stray away from that. I would tend to go either the consultant route, where we have a contractual agreement, an SLA in place. I'm a huge community builder. And so we're in the same communities. I'm gonna call you out on it. and so, that would be the route, or the W-2 route. And honestly, it really comes down to budget. I have allocated budget to spend throughout the year, and I try to manage those funds wisely. I use my prioritization list, and I use my bandwidth personally. If there are things that I can take off my plate, or a struggling team member's plate that needs some support in any area, and I know that they're spending X amount of time on these things, then we would look to add some additional support in that respect. Now, if that additional support is W-2 support, it must be extremely extensive. You must be putting in 24 hours a day. And, there has to be some proof of concept for me to be able to go and advocate for what we need for our team. But if they're just saying, I'm struggling with one or two things that I really just can't get to, and I need some support, it's easy enough to just go out and get a contractor to help us with that initiative.
Got it. Yeah, no, that's good advice as always. And the last thing I'd like to add is, do you have any other final thoughts just for the community, for, RevOps leaders in general, that you'd like to share here?
Yeah, absolutely. Finance is your friend. I would definitely say that was the statement and the topic for today. So don't think that they're policing or, working against us in any way. Use them as a partner as you are navigating the business, because you will get so much further faster. And the things that they have to say are things that we should all be considering, because, as we're looking at a sales cycle, for example, we want to pull in a solutions engineer before we even understand if they're qualified. Why are we doing that? We're spending time and money and energy on things that are not worthwhile. And so finance can help us figure out what those things are and what it means for our organization. And then the other piece, the business intelligence piece, is integrated systems are so important. I cannot tell you how many times I have cleaned up, all of the like data, just extensive, data, worksheets, workbooks, whatever, that ended up being completely different because they came from two different systems, but they should have been the same. And unique identifiers for specific contracts or projects or et cetera, however you identify your business model and however you break out any individual piece of business, if it's company level, if it's contract level, if it's project level, like unique identifiers matter because they tie into other systems. You have to connect them and utilize the other connectors to be able to just drive even, one, data integrity. Well, that's a whole different topic, and the policies that go around that, and data governance, and making sure that things are the way that they're supposed to be. In addition to, the protocols, like SOC 2, and there's other things that go into it with the BI side of the business. We'll let BI worry about that, but they also should be a partner to you. And the more that we integrate systems, the more that we make sure that information is matching between systems, and the more that we utilize business intelligence to show, things that roll up from all of these systems, the more insight we have that informs our strategy and can help us pivot in times where, maybe the market, we didn't anticipate a pandemic, but we needed to evaluate and we needed to pivot. And so not having that information readily available meant that people had to go and scramble for it, and they had to go and pull reports. We had to go and figure out how can we adjust our product. Being forward thinking and as strategic as possible when it comes to roadmaps for every part of your business, product, RevOps, so how we evolve in these different areas is something that will support longevity and success as we are building great companies that are just really shining out here.
Yes, I love that you mentioned integrated systems because this data is only as valuable as it is accessible. And if you have 5 different tools with 5 different sets of unique identifiers, with 5 different ways of even storing first and last name, then you get into a big mess, and you can get stuck just cleaning up that data and not acting on it. Yeah.
So hard. Do not recommend.
All right, Brianna, well, thank you for your time. What is the best way for people in the community to reach you if they have follow-up questions, thoughts that they want to discuss with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm on LinkedIn, Brianna Yarbrough. I actually did a Slack AMA, and I think it's linked on the RevOps Co-op community. Yeah. And wherever we put this, we can drop it in there so that people can click on that link and be able to get in contact with me.
All right, sounds good. Well, thanks again for your time.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.